So, these movies have been on my mind a lot lately. As a matter of fact, the entirety of Middle-earth has been. Probably just because I want to live my last days as a Tolkien fan before the Amazon thing released. But I always had a weird affection for the Hobbit movies ever since I saw them when I was young. So you can imagine my distress when I grow up and I see all this hatred and vitriol on the internet toward them. Now, of course, they have problems. And I would like to direct you to this amazing trilogy of videos by Lindsay Ellis to really, really see those. And I think the biggest cause of this, again, outlined perfectly by Lindsay Ellis, is studio intrusion. Now, I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about other problems that people have, the ones inside the story. And I think that that comes down to two main problems. One being the added stuff, the bloat, and two being the weird tonal dissonance that is really palpable through these movies. Now, again, I think that a lot of other people have done a really, really good job at explaining the bloat for these movies, the added stuff like Toriel and Keely's romance, pretty much the entirety of the Battle of the Five Armies, and more stuff like that. So instead, I want to focus on this big tonal gap that I think is by far the biggest problem with these movies, aside from everything else. It's the biggest problem in my opinion. As many of you know, the original Hobbit book, written by Tolkien, is very whimsical in nature. There's lots of songs, lots of just general goofing off. It's also very tonally different from the Lord of the Rings books in the sense that it is quite clearly written for children. And it's pretty obvious because a lot of the situations in the book, like the spiders, are resolved in very, let's say, out of this world ways. Bilbo manages to fend off an entire army of spiders. It's upwards of 50, they say, with only his little sword and a few pebbles. And I'm totally okay with this. In fact, I think that what we have in the movies, these whimsical things, are some of the strongest points. Like, for example, a lot of people like to rip on the barrel riding section, but I loved it. I really liked the action. I thought it was very clever. I really liked how, again, how over the top it was. I liked people were dying left, right, and center. Fucking crazy shit was happening. It was great. I loved it. And in fact, the reason I think that people like to shit all over these scenes is because the rest of the movie, the other 90-95% of the movie is so serious and so dark in tone. We have stuff like the whole Dol Guldur, Gandalf being imprisoned and tortured in the same movie as we have the Goblin King go down, down, down in Goblin Town song. Now, obviously, the Hobbit book has high and low points as well. We have a lot of the dwarves feasting together at Bilbo's house. We have a lot of nice songs and conversations between them. But then we also have the darker moments, such as the dwarves kind of being depressed and trapped by Smaug inside this little tunnel. And I think that the book achieves a much better balance here. It's almost like a 50-50 balance of much darker scenes and then much more child-friendly and fun scenes. The movies, however, have a much, much weightier balance on the darker side. It's almost like an 80-20 or 90-10 balance. So to me at least, these little scenes where we do have the fun poking through, such as that barrel scene, such as the start of the first movie with the Dwarven Feast, they really stick out like islands of quality in this sea of bloat and dreary darkness. And that brings me to the dwarfs. Now, I think that by far my favorite parts of these movies, and most people's as far as I'm aware, is the characterization of the dwarves. The dwarves, aside from maybe Thorin and Balin, aren't really characters. They aren't given much characterization. So a lot of them have kind of gimmicks. You have Fat Bomber, you have the Deaf Oin, you have Gloin, who is pretty much just Gimli's dad. It's a lot like the books where the dwarves rarely speak one by one. They're all kind of portrayed as more of like a hive mind, Thorin's company. And I, for one, really like this. It creates like an immense brotherhood and camaraderie between this group, this troop. And so, um, in the movies, when you have scenes of them kind of throwing each other around and fighting in ridiculous ways, I think there's a scene where one of them kind of ducks down and then the other one comes up on the other side and pushes this guy over him and he falls over the other like you would in a fucking school playground. And these scenes, as well as the bombastic shit like I mentioned, are probably my favorites in the movies. And this might piss some people off, but I think that it creates probably an even stronger sense of brotherhood than we had with the Fellowship of the Ring. Um, we don't really see them together much aside from the first movie in that trilogy. So I think, and I found that it was really lacking in that aspect. We didn't have a big sort of camaraderie built up between this troop. So when they So that scene toward the end where Frodo's in the sick bed and everybody's coming back and congratulating him, it just rang a little bit empty to me. Anyway, we've established that the real quality in these movies, at least to me, comes from the dwarves. I think that they are comical. I think they're funny. I think that they have a great sort of sense of a bond, a very tangible bond. I think that the scenes where they work together and they fight together are just the best. I think that their dialogue together is great. My favorite scene, undoubtedly, in the Hobbit trilogy and potentially in the entire Tolkien cinematic universe, if you will, is the dinner at the start of the first Hobbit movie because I love the conversations they have there. I love the stupid, plates being thrown everywhere. I even love the fucking "That's What Bilbo Baggins Hates" song. A lot of people don't like that. I do. But from this, I think that the real core, the real emotional core of the Hobbit movies is the dwarves and their relationships. Bilbo and Thorin have a great relationship, and although, like Lindsay Ellis pointed out again, sorry for shouting her out so many times, it's just a great series of videos. That when Thorin kind of accepts Bilbo as part of their company at the end of the first movie, it feels a little bit rushed because Bilbo has saved them once, and he saved Thorin in the most out of character way possible by barging into this orc into the side like a rugby tackle. And I would have much rather had them wait until maybe midway through the second movie when he saves them from the Mirkwood spiders or when he saves them with the battle royal escape sequence for Thorin to kind of, break that wall with Bilbo and become good friends with him. Because I think that when Thorin does die toward the end of Battle of the Five Armies, it is very emotional and there's a clear, sense of loss of like this relationship between Bilbo and Thorin. I just wish that it was executed a bit better to begin with. But anyway, if you could cut the Gandalf Dol Guldur stuff out of these movies and the Legolas and Tariel stuff, I think that just the dwarves, like in the books, would make an incredible movie or two, like Guillermo del Toro was going to do. And I really think that these movies still hold up, even if it is just because of these singular scenes with the dwarves and Bilbo. So please, I implore you to go back, watch these movies. If you have to tone out for the bullshit, with Toriel and Keely's romance, that's okay. But I want you to sit down and watch these, and I want you to feel the connection between the dwarfs and the real brotherhood that they have. I want you to watch the dialogue. I want you to laugh at their jokes, and I want you to watch their fight scenes and examine all the crazy duo takedowns that they do together. It's really awesome when you look at it as a tale of this lovely, jolly troop of dwarves going on a crazy adventure. And that's the reason to me that I still enjoy these movies, no matter what everybody says. Anyway, this has been my unscripted rant about why I love the Hobbit movies still and why I love the dwarves so much. And please, if this video reaches you, I would love to hear some feedback about how I did. I would like to hear if you'd like to see more. I just want to create video essays on and discussions about everybody's favorite movies and books and TV shows and video games. It's just what I'm into. Please stay tuned for more content from me. I promise I'll put some out. And thank you so much for watching.